Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sam Lewis coming to you live again from ARC with our Friday afternoon fireside chat. Today we will be talking about upcoming legislation and initiatives that are going to be on our ballot, how they will be affecting the work that we've been doing in the criminal justice field, and more importantly, shrinking or not shrinking our prison system in the state of California. So just a few instructions before we move forward. If you're on a computer, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a ribbon, and at the bottom of the screen, it says chat and Q&A. If you want to send questions or ask questions, please put them in the chat box or in the Q&A, and they will be sent directly to us. We will answer as many questions as possible, and those questions that we cannot answer or we're unable to answer during the time, we will answer on our Facebook or via our Instagram. So I have a couple of amazing gentlemen that are here on the show with me today. I'd like to introduce or allow them to introduce themselves first and foremost. Michael Mendoza, National Policy Director or the National Director of Cut 50. Michael, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to this work.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. So again, my name is Michael Mendoza. I am the National Director of Cut 50, which is a program of the Dream Corps where we focus on national state policies on the federal and state level. And we really do our work to change hearts and minds through laws by uplifting the stories of those who are personally impacted by the criminal justice system through our empathy network. I came to this work personally because, I know what it's like to live in prison. I basically grew up in prison for about 17 years. After being tried as an adult at the age of 15 in the mid-90s. And Sam, I know you remember the mid-90s. It was the era where, we had our tough on crime laws, and kids as young as 14 and 15 were getting 75 plus to life. And so that was kind of my experience until I learned something while I was serving my time, which was, policy saved my life. And so understanding why policy is so critically important to provide hope to others is what really brought me here to this work and my work here at Dream Corps.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for joining our show this evening, or this afternoon. Efrain, my man, how you doing? And could you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and what have you been up to the last few days? Like, describe yourself in your current situation.
Hi, everybody. My name's Efrain Ortiz. I'm a ARC member. I served a 10-year sentence on a 12-year term. Came home last August. This weekend will be my 1-year anniversary from being home. I have since been working as a building clerk for a big fish distribution company. And pretty much as far as being involved with the work, I'm also a student. I'm attending Long Beach City College, and due to the fact that I was just busy working in school, I stopped going to the policy meetings at ARC, which I was attending frequently in the beginning. And I got reached out by the policy team. And this is something that's near and dear to me due to the fact that I did spend the 10 years, and most of my good friends inside were affected by the system, or a lot of them have came home because of these law changes. And some are still in there fighting, and hopefully we can change some more laws to get them home. But this is just near and dear to me because it just affects us all. I've been like I said, I've been working for a whole year now, and just here living life, man.
Hey, thank you for joining us, Efrain. And so two of the initiatives we're going to talk about today will directly affect Efrain. And directly affects 53,000 other people that are currently on parole. So one is Prop 17, formerly known as ACA 6, the right for people that are on parole to vote. And the second one is Prop 20. Prop 20 is also known as the Cooper Initiative, which is an attempt to roll back AB 109, Prop 47, and Prop 57. Basically, as I describe it personally, it's an attempt to refill our prisons. So yesterday it was announced that the California Department of Corrections is at its lowest number in 30 years. It's under 100,000 for the first time in 30 years, under 100,000. When Michael and I and Efrain were in 10 years ago, the number of people that were in prison was 172,000. We're now at 99,000. So we're going to be talking specifically about Prop 17. I have a guest I want to join to the show. This is impromptu, literally. I have to put on my mask so I can social distance. Just a minute, hold up. This is impromptu. This was not part of the show. This is Scott Budnick.
Oh, wow.
What's going on over here?
So I'm glad you got that mask on.
Are you guys shooting something?
This is ARC's Fireside Chat, Scott.
My God, when are you finished?
We'll be finished in an hour. And we have a young man here.
We got my boy Brandon that just got out. This is Brandon right here. We're not social distancing.
Welcome home.
Sam, I need you guys to meet when you're done.
Absolutely. I'll bring you to the minute, Brandon. Welcome home, brother.
Thank you.
Welcome home, Brandon.
So Brandon literally just came home, and one of the things that we want to assist Brandon with is both housing and what we call the returning stimulus package, which gives Brandon some money to have in his pocket to be able to at least have something. Since COVID is here, it's difficult to get jobs. There are a lot of different barriers that are in the way for people that are returning. But this is one of the things that ARC and a number of other organizations are doing. So we have a skeleton crew here. Scott just happens to be in the office, so we are social distancing. But that was kind of like just a quick little add-in for some of our viewers. But back to the topic, which is Prop 17, the right to vote. So Efrain, I want to talk to you a little bit about this. You're currently on parole, correct?
Yes, I'm currently on parole.
And you're working full-time, correct?
Full-time, correct. Through the whole pandemic, I've been working.
So you're was considered an essential worker.
Yes, sir.
Some of the most important people that we're not taking into consideration. So Efrain, as an essential worker and being on parole, you can't vote, correct?
Correct.
What is that? So for you, what does that, like, how does that make you feel in terms of knowing that you're paying taxes, but you can't vote?
I think it's kind of disheartening for me, right? I think growing up as a child, one of the reasons why I began to associate with the wrong crowd was a feeling of not being included, right? And oftentimes with this, I'm out here, I'm paying taxes, and yeah, I'm living life and I'm enjoying life, but I get into discussions with friends and family in regards to politics or policies that are going on, and it's like, I'm reminded yet again that come this November, I won't have that right to vote, right? I get in conversations at work with some of my coworkers, and I hear them talking about that, and it kind of makes me feel left out, right? Because basically California is telling me that I'm essential enough to work, and I'm essential enough to be out here and for my labor, but I'm not essential enough for my vote. And that really, it makes me feel casted out.
Thank you, Efrain. So ARC and other organizations, including Cut 50, Michael, you've worked on ACA 6 from start until now. Now that has been put on the ballot. Could you tell us a little bit more about the road that just went down to get it on the ballot, and exactly what does that mean to reinstate those rights for people that can't vote right now?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I remember, I think it was 3 years ago, while as an ARC member, working with Esteban Nunez and Taina and Initiate Justice on, even beginning to try to collect signatures back in 2017, 18, just to even try to get ACA 6 on the ballot. And, basically ACA 6, what ACA 6 is, it's a constitutional amendment that would restore the voting rights for people who are on parole. And as you mentioned, folks like Efrain and 53,000 other people right now who are working, who are paying their taxes, who are doing everything they can to civically engage within our communities. They're the ones who are hurting the most by not being able to vote in what's going to be one of the most important elections in our lifetime. And so, it was a hard fought battle to get to where we are at today. For the last 2 years, since we weren't able to collect enough signatures the first go around to get it onto the ballot, we came back, and we came back strong and more unified as a coalition to get behind Assembly Member Kevin McCarty, who has authored this constitutional amendment. And we were able to get it passed all the way through with bipartisan support. So both Republicans and Democrats are behind what is going to be proposed to the voters in November, because they firmly believe that it wasn't up to the legislator to make that decision. It's up to the people of California to decide whether somebody like myself or Efrain and so many others who were on parole and couldn't vote, to be able to exercise that right. Because we know it's a very critically important part of the reentry process for so many people coming home. And it's a value of what we believe in this country in America, to have a democracy that is inclusive and it doesn't exclude people just because of the worst decision that they made at one point in their life. You know, there's just so much more to add, but I just wanted to point out that, you know, it was a great, amazing thing that we were able to get to the voters. And just, I'm really, really encouraged and hopeful that the voters will see how important this is for 53,000+ Americans in the state of California.
So I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to other organizations that definitely worked to pass this, including All of Us or None, Initiate Justice, the ACLU, Curb, and there were a number of organizations. This was not just a ARC or Cut 50 thing. There were a number of different organizations that worked to get ACA 6 voted on and placed on a ballot. So this was a collective effort by a lot of formerly incarcerated people and people that are impacted by the criminal justice system. So just want to be clear on that. When we talk about moving legislation like this, it takes a unified effort to restore rights to people that should have never had those rights taken. A couple of years ago, we passed, I believe it was SB 310, which was the right for a person with a criminal background or a felony on their record to be able to serve on a jury. And so these are rights that are being restored that should have never been taken in the first place. In places like Norway, they don't take your right to vote or to serve on a jury or do any of those things when you go to jail or prison. If you commit a crime, you go to prison, but prison is the punishment, not stripping you of your rights and making you silent. So just want to shout out all those organizations that work tirelessly to get this there on the ballot. Now the next move is for us to vote on this. So come November, please tell everyone you know, text, phone call, email, humming messenger pigeon, snail mail, please vote yes on Proposition 17. It's merely giving people on parole the right to vote. I want to share one other thing that's really interesting. If you're on federal probation, meaning that you've been in federal prison and then you're released and you're on federal probation, you can vote. If you're on probation, meaning you could be on probation AB 109 or regular or other probations, meaning you could have been in prison, you're released and you're on probation, you can vote. Both are different types of supervision, but they're extensions of being incarcerated. However, if you're on parole, 53,000 people can't vote like Efrain, who's paying taxes, going to work and making sure. And want to come back to you, Efrain, could you tell us a little bit about your essential work, please?
I think it's funny you said that. You guys see me, I'm in my truck right now. I literally like scrammed out of work just to make this. I came in early. I went in at 3:30 this morning just to get my hours in and get my job done and be here to join this, because I think this is a very important conversation that we need to have. And so at my job, I'm the lead billing clerk. I'm in charge of the logistics. We work hand in hand with logistics pretty much. One of our biggest customers is Costco Wholesale, and we do all Costco USA, not just here in Southern California. We do Costco all throughout the United States, Costco Canada as well. So we're shipping big freights, big truckloads of seafood all over the country, you know. So our job, you know, so you can imagine how many people work in order to make this happen, right? We have people in the production line cutting all the fish up and making all that. Then you got the people, you know, loading it, palletizing it, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody in the warehouse, the freezer team. There's a number of people. And one of the things when I worked with Cut 50 and ARC in regards to ACA 6 was that, because I'm working in a place where you can't social distance, you know what I mean? Even though I work in the office side of it, my job is to coordinate, to make sure all the loads are correct, to make sure everything's there, you know, all that, to make sure everything's palletized correctly. And I'm continuously in and out of the warehouse, interacting with warehouse associates, talking to production. So I'm all over the place. I'm one of the guys that's just, my main job is coordination. The data entry is easy, but the coordination is what's the most important part of it. So one of my biggest fears was getting COVID, right? Because of the amount of contact I had. And regardless of the fact that I had a mask, I had to have face shield on as well as my mask, gloves, hand sanitizer dispenser right next to me, and washing my hands as frequently as possible. It was still the fear. And when we were talking to assembly members, that's exactly what we put. What was my biggest thing was my fear. I'm not only endangering myself, right? You know, we talk about ourselves, but most importantly is my family, my elderly parents, you know, my brothers and sisters, my nephews, all that, you know, and it's you just don't know. And it seems like nobody knows when it comes down to this COVID, you know, just exactly what it is. And unfortunately, I caught COVID 3 weeks ago. No, yeah, 3.5 weeks ago. I got COVID at work. And I was out for 2 weeks, and one of the hardest parts for me was having to isolate myself, right? Because I come from a place of isolation, and having to isolate myself again, I ended up, I live in a transitional home, Aim High right now, and I chose to do that because I wanted to do this on my own coming home. Even though I have a lot of family, a lot of friend support, I wanted to do this on my own. And with the support of everybody as well, but as far as getting back on my feet. And so I chose to go into transitional home. And so I couldn't go to the transitional home. I couldn't go to the transitional home. I refused to go to my parents' house or my brother's house to essentially endanger them. And I got a hotel with my own money, you know, with all that. And the money part wasn't, it's like, whatever, that comes and goes, right? But having to isolate again, it was just like weird. And I kind of messed and joked around about this. And it was like, this is a good way to do a lockdown because I had a queen size bed, a big screen TV, some air conditioning. So, but it did bring me back to that. It did bring me back to those traumatic experiences of having to self-isolate, of having to being confined to a room by yourself. You know what I mean? So that was a tough part, you know, and I'm grateful that I have a lot of great friends, family that were there, you know, taking me what I needed, dropping them off, doing drop-offs and stuff like that, essentially like getting packages. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, that was a big, you know, that was something that I pushed, and unfortunately I came down with it. Luckily for me, none of my families came down with COVID. They all got tested immediately after I tested positive, and I'm grateful because I think those 3 or 4 days, whatever it was, from them testing and getting the results back, that was my biggest worry, right? Like myself, I know I'll push through this. I've been through worse. I've been through a lot. I'll push through it. But that was the hardest part, was waiting, like, oh man, I hope I didn't get my parents COVID, or, you know what I mean? Like that part was hard for me as well. So, you know, but as far as my job, I mean, it's they've taken extra measures now. Now that I've been back, you know, there's a lot of other people that got COVID and they're back, and they're taking extra measures, obviously, because of that, the seriousness of this. And they were already doing so, but it was still not enough. And they've gone above and beyond and essentially really taking care of the employees there, as far as the social distancing and access to the office and things of that nature. So there's only very few of us in the office. Warehouse associates and production cannot go in there anymore. You know, it's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, like I said, this vote for me to having gone through all that and still see everything going on in the news about the November elections, it's kind of like I'm still not a part of that. I still can't be a part of that, and that really it just you know, it really sucks. It really sucks.
Thank you, Efrain. So a couple of things that I follow. Like when COVID first hit and there was a run on the stores, including Costco, there were lines around the block. I'm a Costco shopper, and one of the things that I noticed, I remember talking to some of the people that run the Costco where I live at, and I know some of them personally, and they were literally saying trucks were coming in every single day. And so I actually went down one morning at 5 in the morning, stood in line and watched as all these trucks were just coming in and like just unloading. And so when we talk about essential workers, when we need food, toilet paper, bleach, soap, all of those things, Efrain and people like Efrain that are on parole. Like me and Michael at one time were on parole. Efrain is an essential worker that makes us, that like literally makes sure that we have the things that we need for everyday life. And so I would ask for people that may be opposed to allowing people that are on parole to vote, why? Why? He pays taxes, Efrain pays taxes, he works hard. He's making sure that the rest of this country has food and other things that we need every day. Why shouldn't he have the right to be able to vote? Michael, a second piece of our legislation that we want to talk about is Prop 20. Could you tell us a little bit about what does Prop 20 do and what does it roll back?
Proposition 20, essentially considered or called the Prison Spending Initiative, would essentially roll back some of the hardest fought wins that a lot of us in California fought for, such as, you mentioned one of them, the realignment, AB 109, but also Prop 47 and Prop 57. These are ballot initiatives that, when we look at Prop 57, it changed the way people were classified for certain theft crimes, shoplifting and under a certain amount of property that was stolen, if it was less than $950, people wouldn't be charged with a felony or a wobbler, but instead charged with a misdemeanor because they're nonviolent crimes. And so Prop 47 also invested in our communities. Since Prop 47 passed, we've had over $300 million go into trauma recovery centers, going from 1 in California to about 14. And so Prop 47 did a lot for our state in California by providing not just laws that aren't over criminalizing people for nonviolent crimes, but resources into the communities that are really desperately needed. And Prop 20 would roll that back and actually take us back to the mid-90s, as you mentioned, Sam. Prop 20 is the basic message of Prop 20 is to get back to a tough on crime stance and over criminalize people who are mostly people of color, Black and brown people. And at the same time, to really kind of take away the resources that our communities desperately need. But it also would roll back another proposition, Prop 57, a proposition that we all worked and fought hard for. And when you look at what Prop 57 did by establishing a parole board for people who have nonviolent crimes, both those propositions have really led to us getting to this point. Sam, you mentioned we're at what, less than 100,000 people in CDCR. I kind of was like, you know what, you need to show me that number, Sam, because I never thought that we'd get there. And these propositions, realignment, Prop 47, Prop 57, it was really because of those propositions that we were able to get to this, historically low point within the CDCR. So, we desperately need to ensure that everybody knows that, we need to vote no on Prop 20 because it's going to really hurt our criminal justice system, over criminalize people. And instead of continuing to lower the prison population and to reduce overcrowding, this would actually over incarcerate and fill back up our prison populations. And so I know, ARC has done a great job with some, data points. And when we look at it, like in the county jails, since Prop 47, we take a look at how the prison and jail populations have declined dramatically. And unfortunately, Prop 20 wants to undo this. And if it passes, we'll see an uptick and overcrowding in the prison populations. And so, Prop 20 is something that we definitely need to look at when it's considered the prison spending initiative. It's actually going to do the opposite and cause California to spend much more on the criminal justice system in ways that we shouldn't invest in. So I know you probably have a lot more to add to that, Sam.
I wanted to ask Efrain first. Efrain, did you benefit in any way from Prop 57 while you were incarcerated?
Through the programs, yes. Through a lot of the programs, I was able to reduce my time through education. I began my college program in there and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
So to give people to better understand, Prop 57 incentivized a number of different programs, including college education. And so I've often heard people say, well, why should we let people that are in prison go to college? Why should we pick for them to go to college? Think of it in terms of this as an investment. So we're going to spend between $78,000 and $82,000 to keep a person in prison. They're going to be there anyway. That's what it's going to cost us anyway. Now, what if you have a program that guarantees that they won't come back, such as college and other rehabilitative programs? And then when they come back in the community, they're able to work, pay into the tax base, like Efrain, like Michael, like myself, pay into the tax base. Now we're not costing taxpayers any money. We are taxpayers, and we enhance public safety. How do we enhance public safety? Look at all three of us. All three of us are formerly incarcerated. All three of us are full-time employed. All three of us are examples of what the system can actually help us accomplish if given the opportunity to do those things. Like, despite of not having rehabilitative programs at one time, we still push forward. Now that we've incentivized these programs, people like Efrain and the under 100,000, I love saying under 100,000 now, people that are in state prison have an opportunity to be in rehabilitative programs. A question from the audience, could we be a bit more specific, Michael? What does rolling back mean? And could you be specific first to Prop 47? How would it roll back Prop 47? And then how would it roll back Prop 57?
Yeah, so when we talk about rolling back, we're basically saying that, when we passed Prop 47 or Prop 57, certain things were codified in the law and approved by the voter. Prop 20, what it would do to roll back what voters approved under Prop 47, Prop 57 would then change the language to say, for example, Prop 47 changed certain theft-related crimes such as shoplifting, where the value of the property stolen does not exceed $950. So Sam, if I stole something that in California did not exceed $950, I can be charged for a misdemeanor, but not for a felony. However, Prop 20 would change that and say, well, if Michael Mendoza stole $250 worth of property by shoplifting, we're going to charge Michael with either a felony or wobbler instead of just a misdemeanor, which is for a nonviolent crime. And so that's what we mean when Prop 20 would roll back language in the law that would say we can now charge Michael Mendoza with a felony for a nonviolent shoplifting charge of property that was $250. And what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of times these are people trying to get by or living in poverty and just unfortunately making bad decisions. And these are people that we should not criminalize and charge with a felony because it's going to haunt them for the rest of their life with that felony conviction and the stigma attached to it. And that's what Prop 20 would do. It would roll it back and then it actually would say, you know what, we should be able to charge people with felonies even if they just stole $250 of groceries. And that is not wrong. That is wrong. That goes against our values. And when we believe about hope, redemption, and rehabilitation. And so that's one example of what we mean by rolling back.
So I'd like to add a little bit to that too. So when we talk about rolling back, Prop 57 and 47 decreased the number of people in prison. And so I want to kind of turn this a little bit just so we could look at present day right now. Present day right now, our prison system, even though it's under 100,000, is still overcrowded. All of the health experts have said that it has to be down by 50%, which is about 78,000 people in prison. So I just want to update you right now. In the Department of Corrections, as of today, 47 people have died from COVID-related illness issues. There are currently 1,143 active cases in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation of COVID-19. 47 active cases in the Department of Juvenile Justice, which is the juvenile branch of CDCR. Now, people will continue to die if they can't social distance. So they've been given masks inside the institutions, they have hand sanitizer and soap, but they still can't social distance. You have people that have to share a cell because the prison system is overcrowded. And so if we're looking just in terms of right now, there were 6 people that were scheduled to be released of the 47 that have died, that were scheduled to be released next year. There were 4 that were scheduled to be released this year. They died. We didn't sentence to them, like they weren't sentenced to that. That's not, like they were not meant to die in prison. And so because our system is overcrowded, because of a lot of these complex and antiquated laws, people are dying because we can't create enough space in our system. And so what Prop 47 and Prop 57, or what Prop 20 would do, it would roll back the gains of Prop 47. When Michael and I said this at the top of the show, when Michael and I were in prison, I believe the highest number was 172,000 people in prison. 172,000 people in prison. Now we're under 100,000. So there's more space, but it's still not enough space until we get down to about 76 or 78,000 people. So if we're just thinking in those terms, that's one. 2, when we look at what Prop 57 did, it allowed people who had nonviolent crimes but had these ridiculous enhancements. The enhancements were actually longer than the base terms that people were sentenced to, just literally filling our system up. So Prop 57 gave them a way to go to the board, and the board, which is made up primarily of former law enforcement, have an opportunity to look and say, is this person a high risk or low risk? And so they're able to be released, but they have to earn that release through the incentivized rehabilitative programming that's available. So if we take all those things away, what happens? We're warehousing people again, and we're not humanizing them. Michael, in terms of Prop 57 to Prop 47, what were the gains that the community saw from Prop 47 savings?
So as I mentioned, I think over $300 million went back into the community because of Prop 47. And these monies really impacted programs for youth, especially for at-risk youth in California. And again, also giving towards the trauma recovery centers, which are critical for people impacted by crime. And so it was a huge savings there.
So I can definitely talk or speak directly to, I know the mayor's office has received BSCC funding through Prop 47, and I know ARC has used this to help with life coaches for our youth that are coming home from DJJ, so that through that savings, we're able to provide life coaches and resources through Prop 47 BSCC granting. And so literally the gains have been seen, they're tangible. We see it in the community. When we're talking about the defund the police or defund CDCR, it's not to eliminate them, it's literally to move money from there. So the savings from Prop 47 goes directly to the community. And so when you see this is something that's tangible and that you can actually see. Michael, how can people actually get, so wait a minute, a question from the audience. Why is Prop 20, and I find this kind of hilarious, called the prison spending law? Does that mean that they want to spend more money and put more people in prison? I think, at least that's how I interpret it. But could you explain that a little bit to us?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have the exact answer to why it would be called that. But, you know, a point I wanted to make earlier in terms of defining what we mean by rollback, it's not just, you know, the legal part or the law part that this proposition would attempt to roll back, but it's also the narrative. It's also the politics. You know, since the mid-90s, people in California have fought hard to humanize people who are been in prison and are formerly incarcerated, because before then, you know, we're always considered or looked at and called, you know, felons, ex-cons, inmates, you know, all these dehumanizing terms. And when we look at what this essentially wants to do, it kind of wants to do essentially that, take us back to a time in the mid-90s when people in prison are dehumanized and over-criminalized and really sent back to prison for non-violent things that shouldn't, incarcerate someone for. So I kind of wanted to mention that as well. It's a narrative shift that we have fought so hard for, and some people just don't want to continue to see people that have been in prison humanized in a way that they deserve to be. And so I just wanted to kind of make that point as well. Sometimes propositions, names, titles, it's whatever is going to work to help that initiative pass, whatever is going to appeal to the voter. And sometimes it might not always be accurate, and sometimes it could be a little bit untruthful almost. Don't know if that answer helps, but I just wanted to mention in terms of the shift in narrative, it's really important.
So a couple of questions. One, someone asks, is there going to be a media campaign regarding these initiatives? Yes, there will be. We're working on it now. We are also working in collaboration with some other organizations to actually have a voter list of things to vote yes and no on for the upcoming ballot. So there will be a campaign push. The election is November 3rd. We didn't want to get ahead of ourselves and start pushing this out too soon where people will forget about it. And we want to put it out at a time where people voting will be at the top of their mind. Right now, surviving in COVID has been at the top of people's mind. And so we feel like our time is better now to start introducing this and really educating the public about it.
I think Sam may I just add to something in regards to proposition. Now I was doing I've been involved advocating for Proposition 17, which was ACA 6, and I did some research on just Prop 20 and kind of got my eyes on it. And I think something that Michael mentioned earlier is very important for people to understand, because when you start changing the felony to misdemeanor aspect of some of these crimes, there are some, especially like juveniles, like you said, that'll impact, you got juveniles, you got people young age that make one mistake, and now this is going to become a felony. And that really takes a toll on you because it affects you for the rest of your life. I came home, and at this job, I went through a job agency, and something that I had to deal with was my criminal background. And luckily for me, I was ready, thanks to ARC, as a matter of fact, because we did a portfolio class where we had grabbed all our certificates and things of that, letters of recommendations, things that might help us out in preparation for looking for jobs and things of that nature. And my job had rescinded their initial offer to me because of my criminal background. They gave me 5 days to submit paperwork, and I reached out to some certain people, some organizations, my life coach at ARC, Harvey, and even Nicole, and they helped me out. They helped me out like immediately, send me some letters of recommendation, and I was able to obtain my job. And I'm grateful for that, because now actually I'm able to not have to hide that, and I'm able to educate, the presidents of my company, some of my coworkers in regards to that, because like what we're doing now with Prop 17, they had no idea that someone on parole, they don't even understand the difference between parole and probation. But when we start educating, when we start getting this out there, it's so important, because so many people just really don't know.
One other question, Michael, and we both can answer this, but I'd like for you to answer. Pamela Weston would like to know, why do they call Prop 20 the Cooper Law?
Cooper, there's an assembly member, his name is Jim Cooper. Jim Cooper is a former sheriff in the county of Sacramento. And I think it's called the Cooper Law because he is one of the main proponents behind Prop 20 and wanting to see it pass, given his law enforcement background. Just to be fair, this is something that he believes to be his solution, or a solution that would be good public safety for, the proponents of Prop 20. And so I think because of the assembly member and the recognition of where he stands on criminal justice reform is why his name is so heavily attached to this proposition.
So I, at this point, I'd like to share with our audience a couple of things. When I was in prison, I spent 24 years in prison. When I was in prison, they had cut out college programs. They didn't have any college programs. At one point, they had no rehabilitative programs. They didn't even have narcotics or Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. There was nothing. You were warehoused. And I remember those days. And I also remember when we started creating programs amongst ourselves, the population inside, because we wanted to be better. We wanted to see the best versions of ourselves. I remember having to figure out ways to manipulate the system in order to get college textbooks because they didn't allow us to have them. And I was able to figure out ways to get my bachelor's degree, which at that time was extremely difficult. I can tell you of times when books would just come up missing and I would have to repurchase them 2 or 3 times. I'm able to do things that I'm able to do because I was able to go through rehabilitative programs that we created, meaning the population inside. I was able to finish my college degree and use those things when I came home. I was a gang member, a dope dealer, a high school dropout when I went into prison. I walked out of college graduate with a desire to change things. And I'm not different from anyone inside right now. What's happening now is that we've been able, and when I say we, I mean all of the former incarcerated along with our allies have been able to create more opportunities for people to pursue rehabilitative programming in college and opportunities to become the best versions of themselves and come home and do things like Efrain and Michael and thousands of others. And so when people want to roll back these laws that have made our system more humane, that has made it more equitable, not fully equitable, but more equitable, these are merely the same fear mongers of the past. I want to say hard on crime. There's not been an uptick in crime. Where's the uptick in crime that everybody's yelling about? Where's the uptick in crime that people have talked about? Want to jump to a question. So here's, if you look on our screen, take a look at this graphic right here. So 1960, uptick, if you look at California's violent and property crime, and look at it real closely. The purple is violent crime, uptick around in the 90s, and now here we are at 2015, it dips, and this is after Prop 47 and Prop 57. The same as property crime, uptick, 1980 is going down in the 90s, here we are at 2015, it's still going down. I'm waiting for Mr. Cooper or others like him to show us the uptick. These rehabilitative programs that Proposition 57 have provided and changing the wobbly felonies and misdemeanors under Prop 47 have done our system good and have done our communities good. Michael, could you explain the difference between parole and probation?
Yeah, just really briefly, parole is statewide, is controlled by the state. Probation is on a county level, both separate systems. You know, just basic explanation of that. It's this difference between state level functions and county level functions, both different, made in different ways.
Thank you, Michael. So one of the last things that I'd like to say on this topic, there's another initiative which we'll be discussing in another couple of weeks, which is ending cash bail, which is has become some bit contentious within the community, and I would like to be able to share with our audience and the public in general why ending cash bail is important. We will be discussing that in depth, but for now, stay tuned for that. I'd like to take the last few minutes to do a couple of things. One, I'd like to ask our panelists, the amazing Michael Mendoza and the amazing Efrain Ortiz. Efrain, you go first. Any last thoughts you want to share with our audience?
I would just say this, parole is a supervision. It's not meant to be punishment, right? It's something that was meant to help us reintegrate back into society by offering us services, anything we might need, guiding us kind of what our resources are. Yet still, I have to serve a minimum of 2 years on parole, and I feel like I'm still being punished because I don't have that right to vote. So let's remember that parole, by definition, is not meant to be punishment. It's supposed to help us reintegrate back into society. How can I reintegrate back into society if I have no right to vote? Thank you, Sam.
Michael, last thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Efrain. Vote. Plain and simple, please vote. Vote because many of us who have been impacted by the criminal justice system have fought hard to change the laws to provide more hope and public safety for everyone. And so please vote. Vote yes on Prop 17 and vote no on Prop 20.
So you heard it. Vote no on Proposition 20, yes on Prop 17. That's correct. I have another question. I have a number of the increase in pretrial detention if you want it to be, okay. Yeah, please share that demographic, pretrial detention. So this is from 1970 to 2015, a 433% increase. And so pretrial detention, meaning that you're in the county jail waiting for your trial. So just two things. One, shrinking our system. This number definitely needs to decrease. But more importantly, when we think about pretrial detention, this is a direct factor. We could talk a little bit about it, Michael, in terms of bail reform. Why do most people end up staying in jail in pretrial detention?
You know, Sam, that's a good question. There's so many people who have not been charged with a crime, and because they can't afford bail, they're locked up. You know, we're in a country that believes in, you know, or should believe in innocence until proven guilty. And unfortunately, it's exact opposite during pretrial detention. People who have not been found guilty or innocent or have not been charged are being held just because they can't afford bail. And, you know, that is not right, as something that we need to change. And so that's one of the major reasons in terms of, you know, locking people up based on what they make or the lack of what they can provide is definitely wrong, and definitely what we're trying to change here.
One last question, Michael. I want to ask you this question. What other states in the United States allow people that are on parole to vote? How many states are there? Do you know that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, you know, when we look at it nationally, we have about 18 states plus DC who allow people to vote as soon as they get home. So post-incarceration, even if they're on supervision, they can vote. But however, unfortunately, we also have about 18 states or 19 states that don't allow people to vote until they're completely off probation and parole. So they can be out here, you know, an essential worker like Efrain, who is, you know, putting his life at risk. You know, unfortunately, caught COVID, and I'm so glad that you're better now. People like Efrain and so many others cannot vote in about 19 states. And unfortunately, in 9 states, we have states that don't allow people to vote, period, and can possibly lose their voting rights for life. And so our country, in about 18 states, have it right. It could be better. And the other half of the country desperately needs more education around why it's important to restore voting rights. And that's why it's critical in California to ensure that people have that right, that Efrain has that right, that he can civically engage and become a part of our democratic process in a more meaningful way.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Efrain. Again, vote yes on Prop 17, vote no on Prop 20. We will be coming out with a voter card that we will push out, and you will see more on social media and media advertising exactly what these laws do. If you'd like to get more information, please contact us. It's arcinfo.com. Reach out to us on social media channels where we will definitely be able to communicate with you. Next week, don't want to miss next week, and we will be putting this out. We will be promoting much more. Next week, we're going to talk about the exclusion of violent offenders or people that were convicted of violent crimes in the mass release of people, or the 8,000 that are being released, and exactly why not include people that are being convicted of violent crimes. The terminology you use is violent offenders. I would fall into that category. I would be considered a violent offender. I think both of our panelists would be considered violent offenders. I think we're setting a pretty good example of what reducing recidivism looks like. I think we're setting a pretty good example of what it looks like to enhance our public safety by the ways that we live our life. So next week, we will have a panel of people that were once considered violent offenders. And we will talk in depth of what does extreme sentencing mean, not just in California, but in our nation. And what does that mean? What is the impact on both individuals and families? Until then, next week, everybody take care. Please stay safe. Wear a mask, social distance, and be blessed. Peace.